Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be suggesting you save some money for some bounce back players for the 2024 fantasy football season.
Hike!
All right, Joe. So why don't you start us off here? Who do you got for your first bounce back player that you're going to save some money for?
Yeah, my first bounce back player I'm going to go with here is quarterback Joe Burrow. And, last year was a pretty miserable year for him. He entered the year with a nagging calf injury. Then later in the season, he ended up, with that wrist injury that ultimately took him out for the season. And even when he was playing with that calf injury, trying to play through it, it just wasn't the same guy. At the last year, he only had 23.
You weren't worried about it, though.
What's that?
You weren't worried about it last year. You thought it was a nothing burger.
I know. I wasn't worried about it. I thought he was going to be able to play through it. Just it didn't happen that way, Steve. Unfortunately, you were actually right about that. Being more concerned about the calf, and then honestly, the wrist that ended up taking him out. But I think this year, going in fully healthy, he's been healthy through training camp thus far. I think he rebounds to have a nice season. He's going to have a motivated T. Higgins who's playing in a contract year. Also has Jamar Chase there, and we'll see how this run game goes. A lot of buzz about Chase Brown with Joe Mixon no longer being there, but I think we're going to see, the Joe Burrow of old come back, and he's going to end up being a top quarterback. And currently, he's listed as the quarterback 6, and he's going for $14. So I still think he's got the opportunity, to at least possibly get back to being a top 5 quarterback.
It definitely seems like Burrow's got some swagger right now, and I'm not just saying that because he dyed his hair and changed his hairstyle. I think he really wants to prove people have forgotten who Joe Burrow is. That's what it sounds like anyways in some of the comments he's made, that he feels like he's been short-sighted, I'd say. So I think he wants to prove something. But do you think at all the offense is going to be impacted by the departure of Brian Callahan, now the head coach of the Titans? I'm putting a little bit more emphasis on it than you are, it seems.
Yeah, I know you're concerned about that. You're looking at it from, the Philadelphia Eagles standpoint. Steichen leaves, and Jalen Hurts in that offense last year looked totally different with the new offensive coordinator. But I guess I'm putting more faith in Zach Taylor and his offensive mindset, that he can continue to keep this offense moving, where you're putting more of the onus on Callahan. And, with him leaving, you're worried that so might this productive offense.
Well, not to mention his offensive line's an absolute sieve.
Yeah, I mean that is true, but he gets rid of the ball pretty fast. It's just a matter of, getting these guys open quickly enough for him to make those passes. But you're not wrong. Their offensive line, should be better, but they've allocated money elsewhere, and just is what it is.
I will say, though, it does support your thinking as far as this episode, because I do think that he could be a bounce back player, and I think you'd be able to save some money. He's not a dual threat quarterback. He's a prototypical pocket passer. He can run, but he doesn't amass a lot of stats in the running game. So
yeah,
I think you could save some money by getting him, and if he wants to go scorched earth, you'll be happy about it.
Yeah, and I mean Dak Prescott was the QB1 in a lot of places last year, and he doesn't run a whole lot. So you don't necessarily have to be a running quarterback in order to get into the top. So, if he comes back, I do think he's got that top 5 upside still.
So my first bounce back player that I think you could save some money on, and I think you should save it for, is quarterback Kyler Murray. He's currently going for $7. He's right now the quarterback 9. Obviously, he tore his ACL in 2022, so you got to scrap that season. And then 2023, he actually came back from it. I didn't even think he was going to play the entire year. I thought that with the it seemed like disharmony that was going on there, I was wondering if Murray was on his way out. At least there were rumblings of that, and kind of the Cardinals hitting the reset button. But, that's not the case. But I think people forget how good this guy was prior to the injury. 2021, he was quarterback 10. 2020, he was quarterback 3. 2019, he was quarterback 6. And in those years, he had DeAndre Hopkins as a bona fide wide receiver 1. I think you and I both agree. Even though he's a rookie, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to, I think, very impressive, and I think he's going to impress very early on in his rookie season. So I think Murray's got some good upside. And if you only have to pay $7 from him, I think you save some money on the quarterback position. So I like that as an option.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned with the Marvin Harrison Jr. and even a guy like Zay Jones coming over, I think it's going to help this offense. And I think Kyler Murray, should be able to rebound this year. And curious to see, where he ends up finishing. But I do think he's going to be a lot better. And for his price that he's currently going at, it's hard to beat that.
It honestly might be the most amount of weapons he's ever had. I mean, he had a aging AJ Green, and DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, he didn't really. I mean, they had Christian Kirk, and he was good, but he's not Christian Kirk like Jacksonville. Jacksonville actually uses him, where he was just really stretching the field when he was in Arizona. But now, like you said, he's got Zay Jones, he's got Marvin Harrison Jr., he's got Trey McBride, a budding young tight end, Michael Wilson, promising young receiver out of Stanford, got two backs in Connor and Trey Benson. So things are looking a little brighter there in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah. And, finally, it also has some stability there at the head coaching position and, his offensive coordinator, which always helps. I know, he's battled some different coaching staffs there as well.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. So, Joe, who is your second bounce back player that you got your eye on?
Yeah, I'm going to go with running back Jonathan Taylor. And I really like the way he finished last year. Started the year, obviously, contract issues, came into the season was battling some injuries, but once he came back healthy, it looked like the Jonathan Taylor of old. Just 2021, this guy was the RB1 on the season. I know he had a down 2022 year as well, but usually when those guys are the RB1 and carry the ball that much, that following year, they tend to not do as well. So that made sense. But then last year being injury riddled, but like I said, him coming back, he ended up getting 7 touchdowns on 169 carries, had 741 rushing yards, and that was with limited amount of games as well. So give this guy the full season, and I think he should be battling for the top 5 running back spot. I don't think it's crazy if he's up there, possibly in the top 3 once again. Just with Shane Steichen and the way the Colts like to run the ball. Especially with Anthony Richardson, we know that run game is going to be a big part. The concern though for him is probably the touchdowns with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. How many of those touchdowns does kind of Richardson vulture kind of what Jalen Hurts would do with the Eagles with those running backs? But outside of that, I think his yardage and production is going to be up there. He's currently at the running back 5 going for $45, which I know we're talking about cheap bounce back players, but in terms of the other top 3 running backs, he's still cheaper than the likes of, Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, and Bijan. McCaffrey's going for 69, Breece Hall's at 52, and Bijan's at 48.
Well, I mean, I think you can still save money. I mean, I don't think you're going to have to be in a bidding war like you would for a Christian McCaffrey or Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson. I think you can still get a caliber of player who has the upside to get to the point where he could be the RB1 on the year, but you're not going to have to spend that. So I still do think you're able to save money for targeting a guy like Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And honestly, when it comes down to it, I agree with you on this. I think Jonathan Taylor, what I like about him is no Zach Moss. Zach Moss is gone. Zach Moss, he surprised me. He actually really created a role for himself when Jonathan Taylor was gone. And I honestly was surprised that they even gave him the extension as a result because, Moss was doing quite well. But they really want that pairing, supposedly of Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson. Money talks, right? So I like this one for you. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think he's an under the radar guy. I don't think a lot of people are talking about him.
Yeah, I just think, it is a little bit removed since he was the RB1 and he's kind of had a couple of disappointing seasons in between. But like I said, I just like the way that he ended last year. And if he carries that momentum into this year, I think he's going to be right back in the top.
All right, so my second bounce back player that I'm going to be targeting is running back Ramondre Stevenson. He's going for $12. He's running back 19, and prior to this last season, he was RB7. So he had a really good year and a big disappointment in the past season, but the Patriots were a mess. But recently things are looking a little more are brighter for Ramondre. He signed a 4-year extension for $36 million. I think you and I both were shocked by that because you don't really see, a 4-year extension for a second contract for a running back. We know there's a guarantee there. It really would only probably be 2 years, but regardless, surprised to see them invest in him. But he really doesn't have all that much behind him. It's really just Ramondre Stevenson. Obviously, Damian Harris went to the Bills. He's retired. There's not really a lot of options there. And I think this offense, based on what I'm understanding what Jerod Mayo wants to do, this is not a high-powered offense. We're talking about gritty defense and running the ball. This is a defensive guy. So to me, I think that Stevenson could get a ton of volume this season. So I think at RB19, he's a steal. So I like the $12. I think he could overperform where he's currently slotted at.
Yeah, he definitely could. Like you said, the volume should be there for this offense. They don't really have a quarterback that I'm sure Jerod Mayo is going to want dropping back 30, 40 times a game. So they're definitely going to have to rely on the ground game and put pressure on their defense to get stops, because like last year, we'll see how many points this offense is able to put on the board. But Stevenson had a pretty good workload last year. Season did end short with injury there, but when he played, he looked really good. And like you said, the value is there. And I think it could be easy for him to outperform that spot.
So, Joe, who's your final bounce back player that you've got your eye on?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned him earlier. I'm going back to the Cincinnati Bengals, and I'm going to go with wide receiver T. Higgins. And look, if you drafted him last year, you were supremely disappointed. I get that this guy's never played a full season. He only played 12 games last year, but he's in that contract year, Steve, and he's going to be looking to ball out so he can cash out. Yep, and get that bag. So I'm believing in him on this contract year to have a big season. Obviously, I've got the faith in Joe Burrow that, coming in with him being healthy, if he can stay healthy for the full season as well, and both of these guys do, I think T. Higgins could get back to what we've seen before. He's the prior 2 years besides last year, he was over 1,000 yards. And I think, he should be able to return right back to around that 1,000-yard mark.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm torn on this guy. I really am. I've always seen him as kind of a safe floor play. I don't even think I tried to get him last year, I believe, and I don't think I had any exposure. Good thing I didn't.
Yeah.
But he obviously was a massive disappointment. Right now, wide receiver 26 going for $18, which doesn't seem like that much. But then I see the players around him, and I'm like, I kind of like those other players better. So I actually think that he could go less than 18. I feel like a majority of people are actually down. This is only through mock drafts and stuff that we've done, right? So it's very, we don't have a lot of evidence of this, but I just feel like in general, all the attention is on Jamar Chase, and with
Right.
everything that's transpired with T. Higgins, people are really excited about Jermaine Burton, I included, but now he's having some injury issues. So now that he's having injury issues, they're talking about they now like Andre Josephus. So maybe I'm like, maybe Burton isn't going to have as good a year. Josephus is going to be involved, but does T. Higgins go back to his old form? I can't get my finger on this one. I don't really know. He's not a guy I'm bullish on, but I have a feeling. I've got this like horrible feeling in the back of my head that I'm going to fade this guy, and then I'm going to look foolish because I think he could do really well for the reasons you said.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if he gets back to forms, other than last year, he's had over 100 targets and right around 1,000 yards. So if he's able to, place even 16 games like those prior years, I don't see why he can't return to that form.
Do you agree with me though that you feel like you get him less for 18, or you feel like it's going to be around there, or do you think he's going to go more than that?
I don't know if he'll go more than 18. Maybe he could. I mean, especially if you have Bengals fans or something. But I do think I think people were burned by him last year, and that's what the purpose of this episode is for. We're talking about bounce back players. So I think those people who were burned by him last year might fade him, causing his price to drop. But I feel like in one of the mocks that we did, I feel like I got him for $18. So I think that probably is a fair price.
So my final bounce back player that I got my eye on, and this guy's a little bit more expensive, but I'll explain. Wide receiver, Justin Jefferson. He's going for $48. He's wide receiver 4. He only played 10 games last year. Before that, people should know, I mean, he's been unbelievable. Wide receiver 1, wide receiver 4, wide receiver 6. I think the question with him is who's throwing on the ball. Is it Sam Darnold? Is it J.J. McCarthy? There's a lot of question marks. It's not Kirk Cousins anymore. So that creates some ambiguity there. You've got Jordan Addison. Is he going to get suspended? Is he not? I'm thinking he probably won't, but we really don't know. I mean, NFL's been kind of mum about it. You got TJ Hawkinson. He's coming back from an ACL. So, they've got Aaron Jones now out of the backfield, but he's a little bit older. He gets banged up a lot too. So there are not a lot of options here. KJ Osborne left. He's no longer on the team. So it's really just Justin Jefferson. So to me, I feel like this guy, I mean, he's an alpha receiver, right? He's arguably the best receiver in the league. So to me, it's like this guy, he's going to amass a ton of targets. I mean, teams could start, I guess, double teaming him, and maybe he's not as good with the quarterback play, so it can be risky. But in my view, I'm like, this guy's just going to eat, Joe.
Yeah, I think he definitely could. And just another thing, TJ Hawkinson coming back from that knee injury. I don't think he's going to be ready to go to start the season. So how many weeks is he going to miss? And that really does put everything on Justin Jefferson. And he is that good of a wide receiver to where I think even if he gets, sure, if he faces double coverage and stuff, I still think he finds a way. Honestly, I think if you want Justin Jefferson, I would prefer JJ McCarthy at quarterback. Seems like he's been doing better than Sam Darnold recently. So I'd be hoping for that just because I think he'll be more willing to take some shots down the field where I'm not so sure, Darnold will be able to do that. But I like your point about Jefferson, though, because I know he's sitting at wide receiver 3, but he's still like $10, $11 less than Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb, who are going ahead of him at 1 and 2. Right. Even Jamar Chase, who's at wide receiver 4, is going for 50. And I know that this quarterback situation with a rookie can be tough for them to support him, or even with Sam Darnold. But just like you said, it's still Justin Jefferson, and he's going to get hyper targeted once again. And I'll take the discount this year.
Yeah, I learned my lesson big time last year. I avoid Mike Evans like the plague. And I love Mike Evans. But I said, oh, no. Baker Mayfield's a quarterback. No way. This could be the first time
there with you.
He's under 1,000 yards. He's not going to do it. And what do you know? Lo and behold, he has a fantastic year. Now, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes when you have a dud for a quarterback, it really can affect you. But I think that's why you can get a discount for him. I think you could save some money for Jefferson. So I'll take the gamble instead of having to pay $12, $13, $14 more for a guy like Tyreek Hill. Will Tyreek Hill be good? Absolutely. But they've got Jalen Waddle. They've got other weapons on that team. Where with Minnesota, it's really just Jefferson at this point.
Yeah, I do think Addison will be there. Talking about these suspensions like him and Rashee Rice, I honestly don't think it's getting close to the season now. I don't think the NFL's got enough time to suspend these guys. And we know how they like to take their time and draw these processes out. So I think if those guys do face discipline, it's going to be next year.
So that does it for this episode where we suggested that you save some money to draft some of these bounce back players for the 2024 fantasy football season. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.